Welcome, everybody. It is me. It is the Cyber Warrior. This is CyberWarriorStudios presents Security Happy Hour, and we are with you live once again. It's going to be an awesome show. We got a lot of things to talk about. There's a lot of things that have happened in the past year. So we will be back, I promise, with our amazing guest. And we're back. And hey, yeah, once again, we are back, and it is me, the Cyber Warrior. With me, as always, I have my partner in crime, my friend, my brother, the one and only Eric Bilardo. Eric, how you doing today, man?
When are you going to fix the music? Come on, man.
Eventually.
Now I'm calling you out in the stream. I am doing okay. This week has been a little challenging for the health front, but always moving forward and going full steam ahead. So we are here again Friday, and it's a long weekend. Yes.
I love long weekends.
Oh, you do.
Because then it's a short week the next week. So
it's a good way of looking.
So with me, with us, we have our guest today. We have Brad Proctor. This is his second time on the show. And
all right. You see, we're upping the quality with some.
There you go.
Yeah. And I mean, a year ago, what was going on?
Right. and that's the kicker, right? So it's been a while since you've been on. I forget what the last topic was we talked about. I think it was just more of your journey and kind of, little bits here or there. But we are now a year out from Kaseya, essentially. And a lot of things.
Yeah.
Kaseya, whatever. And a lot of things have changed. Well, hopefully. But let's start off with, what is your take? Has anything come about that you are aware of since that happened?
So I would like to, we did talk about my journey last time, but we actually completely derailed the entire thing because the day that we recorded it was the day of the actual Kaseya breach.
Right.
And so this is literally a year later that I've been on the show, which is actually why I picked the topic. So really, it's much of the same. Really much of the same as far as what we see, right? I mean, the type of breach they had, anyone can get breached that manner. It really comes down to some of the basics that MSPs are either doing well or not doing so well.
Yeah. And so what would you suggest? Because, I understand when I worked for an MSSP, I dealt with SIM. And so I didn't deal with things like Kaseya. For me, it was Logarithm or McAfee or something like that. And you ran multi-tenant instances, you did on-prem. So you'd have to basically exploit a SIM to gain any type of information versus,
Well, Cyber Warrior, let me interrupt you, and let's go ahead and define what Kaseya is first for our audience.
Go ahead, Brad. Yeah, so it's considered an RMM tool, so a remote monitoring and management tool. And so it's commonly used by MSPs to deliver services, right? That's their main function of what they use it for. With that, it has pretty much unfettered admin access throughout the entire environment or whatever it's installed, right? So if you gain access to a multi-tenant RMM, you potentially have access to admin level access, privilege access throughout the entire environment for multiple of their clients.
Yeah, and it's scary because Kaseya is not the only one that's out there. The remote management solutions that are out there, and those other solutions have been exploited in the past. Kaseya was one of the bigger players in the industry, but there's a bunch of other ones. TeamViewer for one. So those types of remote management are common in MSPs, MSSPs. And it can be very devastating if you get a breach into a remote management solution that you can then pivot to 100 companies, and that's what happened in this instance.
Yeah, and I've stood up several of these, not just not just Kaseya, but if you look at some of the guidance that's been out there for years of when you set these up, they tell you not to have your EDR, your antivirus solutions monitor basically their working folder. And so this ransomware payload, if it was deployed, your EDR solution did absolutely nothing because the guidance from the RMM vendor told you not to monitor it.
Correct.
See, that just seems sketchy to me. If you're saying don't monitor what we're doing, basically, like, hey, we're going to drop whatever we want in this folder. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay. I promise it'll be okay.
And one of the problems is that because of the false positives and that SOC analysts kind of, getting tired of seeing the same alerts when you were using something like this, and being able to go, okay, well, I'm going to connect to company X and I'm going to fix their EDR. Well, it's going to give you an alert that the EDR went down, that, there's a payload coming across to do some more signatures. Those signatures will flag. So they take those alerts out or mute those alerts. So the RMM people say, don't do it because you're going to get multiple alarms every time you establish a remote connection. But if it is an exploit, guess what? You didn't see it either.
It also depends on how fast they can move, right? With this particular one, they got in, they knew the command they're going to execute, they executed the command, and it was done, right? I mean, if you're just detecting, you don't have that much time to respond, especially if your tool is literally not looking at what's open, what's executing out of that folder.
Yeah. And so what does this leave? Should there in this time frame have been something more stringent or some type of guideline or some type of anything that would limit access or provide better guidance than, hey, we're just going to give you the keys to the kingdom?
I think and I think William points it out really well right there, right? You're saying that it was trusted, right? So you're saying the application itself is trusted, but that particular folder that is executing out of that, it may not be something directly from Kaseya, right? It could be a script that the MSP creates, right? Of course, the MSP should be trusted. You're going to potentially have other programs that run outside that RMM is initiating, right? So it might just be where it drops it and then that payload executes. So it may not be that everything's trusted, right? It's a true third-party breach, right? That's what it is. And so to kind of lessen the impact is really, you truly get into the best way to really stop this is some kind of whitelisting of applications, right? Or scripts, right? You know what's good, and anything else doesn't run.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think some companies and a lot of companies try to avoid, or your whitelists and your allow lists and your deny lists and things of that nature, and it's because it's tedious to maintain. But that's one of the things that I promote too at the same time is you should only allow certain applications in your environment. You should only allow certain things to run. And if you're allowing anything, then you can't stop anything. You're relying on EDR or something to hopefully catch something. And we all know you can get around it.
Yeah, that's the other part of it, right? And so the issue comes into the MSPs that use this type of thing. A lot of times is for smaller companies, smaller organizations. So they have no internal IT. So they're putting their full trust in this MSP. And so they don't know any better. And so if the MSP is not doing their job correctly, then I mean, you're just that particular company, they have no recourse. It's just going to happen. And that brings up another bigger problem, which is the MSP industry as a whole. There's no one checking them, right? You can start up an MSP, buy some software, say that you're good at it, and a company wouldn't know any different.
And so are we explicitly trusting these MSPs also at the same time, right? So, hey, KevTech, me too. I whitelist lots and lots and
You
lots.
allow list. We don't say whitelist anymore. You got to be PC. Carajo.
Have you met me?
I know.
So no, I do. I look at MSPs and MSSPs and all these different vendors, and when you look at things like SolarWinds, when you look at Kaseya, it kind of snowballed because SolarWinds was the first, and then Kaseya came after that. You're basically putting a blanket trust on these systems that have access to everything. And
Correct.
is that gets down to are you really, should you be doing that? Should we still be putting in limitations like, hey, even if you're an MSP, you are not allowed to run admin shit on my systems unless you ask. Hey, we need to do this. Okay, you're allowed. Not, hey, we need to do this. We're just going to run it because.
Well, let's get back to the point of hiring an MSP. And a lot of companies, or a lot of the companies that got breached, use an MSP or a managed service provider because they don't have the staff to do it themselves. So what they do is they allow them to be a remote administrator. So they have to do this as a definition of an MSP. Now, can we do it more securely? Yes. Can we use password vaults? Can we use a key management system where we just have to check out an admin password and use it for something, or create a, keep our scripts secured and not like some of these folks do. I just saw some people here saying in the chat that there's MSPs that keep a list in clear text of all the passwords of all their clients because it's an easy way to get. Okay. But, can they do it with a key management system, or can they do it with scripts? The other thing that they do is they keep, like Brad said, they keep all these scripts to do this work, to patch or to do some admin management, and they keep it in a file that is unmonitored. So keep that separately. Put it in, use it, pull it out. Having those processes to do key management, file management, script management and things like that to get a little more secure. But unfortunately, some of these MSPs are not security minded. They're more functionality minded. Brad,
There a lot of them are overworked, right? The MSP industry is how many customers can we get, right? That's the name of the game, and the tools are supposed to make it simpler. And so the technicians, tier one, and they hit out the tickets, right? They're just trying to get those tickets closed as fast as they can, and that's what they have to do. And so if they can cut corners and they don't mean to, or they don't really know what they're doing potentially, they may cut those corners to make it faster for them. The other thing, talking about passwords, is that a lot of times, and I've seen this, right? I do assessments and I talk to MSPs across the country all the time. And one thing I see often is the same admin password for their MSP account used across the entire infrastructure. Or they'll have a service account that's a domain admin, right? That doesn't need to be. Yeah. And so there's certain things that can be done from the MSP point of view that are just best practices, right? That they don't do because they want it to be easier.
Look at what Juan said.
MSPs is also a big issue. Lots of turnover, and many times people are not qualified or trained. True.
and Eric, you said, and MSSPs to manage an MSP, right? Separation of duties is big.
Yeah.
The MSP industry will try to find any SKU to sell. And that's what they're supposed to do, right? It's a managed service. They're supposed to find the service, resell it. But they will potentially start to sell SKUs of different things that they may not know how to implement. They may not have the skills to do it. And there should be separation where there's someone else checking them.
You know, I'm going to tell you, over my career, I don't know how many times I've been called to an MSP that got breached or has some kind of need for incident response, and they didn't have anybody in the MSP to do security. So they have to call somebody else to come and call it rescue them. So this concept of these MSPs having all these queues, doing all this work, like you just said, is big. It's huge, and it happens more often than not.
Yeah, MSPs in general. I saw this myself, even working at an MSSP. You know, salespeople go out and their job is to sell.
We
That's
can
their
do
job.
everything.
And unfortunately, that is what happens. They get told they have a service and they don't reach back to the techs that are actually the engineers that are doing the job, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we can do that. We've got the people." And management allows this because they just want to make money. Well, what happens, and this is how you end up with the turnover that was talked about earlier, is your employees get burnt out. They're like, I can't do a 10-man job with 3 people. It's just not going to happen. And so they leave. You mean salespeople aren't just here to annoy me? No, and actually, there are some really, really good salespeople. They actually know their shit. I know quite a few of them. A few at Logarithm, Carolina at Cisco. There's quite a few that I know personally that make sure they know their shit before they even attempt to sell anything. But
yeah,
it's rough.
I would also say, I mean, it sounds like we're here to like dog MSPs. That's not at all what we're doing, right? There are some really good MSPs out there that do things right and do things the correct way. And they're not just big. There's some small MSPs that do the things the right way. It's just that it's an issue because companies like Kaseya prey on these companies to say, hey, our software can do all this, reduce your manpower, and all you have to do is use our software and set it up. And then they tell you to set it up in a way that's not secure.
And on top of that, let's be honest, even all companies fall victim to the same thing. You get people with buying power that have no idea what they're buying. And they go to these conferences, see the blinky lights, and they're like, they get sold FUD. They get sold that fear of like, oh, wait, this is going to make my job easier. What they don't tell you is it's going to take 15 people to actually develop it, maintain it, give it to TLC, and do everything.
Now let's talk about the actual tool, because Brad brings up a good point. The tool itself, and having used the tool myself, does give you, as an MSP or as a provider or a service provider, it does give you the tools to do your job. And it does a very good job. The tool is a very good job to do that. The challenge is, how do you implement it? And that happens to any tool. How do we implement a tool in a safe way? And that might require different procedures, different processes, different things that we do within the environment to keep it secure. And a lot of times, like you say, we buy these tools, and we try to cut corners as a company and say, don't worry, I'm gonna install it myself, or I'm just gonna use the install package that you guys give us with the 10 hours that you give us of professional services. Well, what happens is, we don't know all the security stuff that the company might have built in, or we just install it in its base form without any of the toggles turned on, and we end up installing a tool in an unsecure manner that wasn't supposed to be. And that's where the problems start. So if there is a vulnerability that gets exploited that could have been stopped by a better implementation, we're screwed. It wasn't the vendor's fault. It was the way that we installed the tool.
Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that, and then also just access control, right? Not just access control to how you authenticate to that tool, right? There's additional layers above what the provider offers access wise that you can implement as an MSP, unless you're cloud based, right? Then you may have a little bit less control over that. But if it's something that you have on prem, you have other tools at your disposal and other controls you can put around that solution when you know what it does, right?
Did you say the cloud is less secure?
Now you have less control to implement another access control on top of it.
Look, the cloud is just somebody else's computer. Let's
We all know
be
that.
honest here.
I was trying to drop a grenade, you know.
But no, I definitely agree. And the other thing is, and Eric touched on it, is if you just install it, and we see too many companies that buy something, whether it's from the MSP or from a sales team or whatever, and what they do is they buy it and they say, we want to take the bare minimum pro serve hours to get up and running. And
ouch.
Fuck you, AR, with the goddamn IT dad joke up in here.
No, Trash Panda's got the dad joke.
Oh man, Trash Panda. If it rains, your data gets everywhere. Oh man. So yeah, so you have these, and you see companies that will buy the bare minimum of pro serve hours, and then be like, oh no, we'll do this to install it, but then everything else is our MSP or this, that, and the third, or they let someone else basically take control, even if it's just them. And that is where the fault lies in that context. Because maybe if you would have got more pro serve and you would have actually had someone that knows the product, install it, configure it, and give you that TLC along the way for the first month or two, then it would be secure on top of properly implemented. Instead of just, hey, we only got 10 hours, so we're going to install it on all your shit, and good luck. Have fun. Deuces.
Well, there's that. There's also that, right? The initial install, but things change over time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And security requirements change over time. So if you're not if you don't have the in-house staff, you've got to do professional services, over and over again, right? To make sure that either you're going to hire in-house to take care of it, or you're going to have to pay someone to take care of it. You can't just let it be, especially with the potentiality that something like this has.
And it was touched on earlier that MSPs are more functionality. Eric mentioned that earlier, right? They're more your IT supplement. All right, so they're gonna what's green and has wheels? Grass. I lied about the wheels. You're so fucked up. So, oh man. So like when you have, if you're just going with an MSP, they're not necessarily security people. They don't care about security. They care about getting the job done. They're a lot like your IT people. Whereas if you go with an MSSP, which has security in the name, they usually have multiple shops to offer you multiple services. So it's, hey, we can give you IT for this and then security for that. So when they offer that, hey, we're going to check this box and sell you 10 different things, you got to make sure you're dealing with that extra S in there, because normally if it's not, it's just a managed service provider. 9 times out of 10, it's just IT they're going to have. Security is just, hey, let's hope we can make it work.
Agreed, and I think they complement each other a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's let IT deal with IT and let security deal with security, and it's keep it separate, and don't let security implement things, right? If it's they can recommend, and then IT can implement. IT is good at implementation. That's what they're there for. Security is good at advising and consulting on what they need to do.
So, Brad, when Kaseya was identified and publicized, we all started looking through our environments to see if Kaseya was being used, if it was being used for us, talk through the identification of the Kaseya vulnerability in your travels.
This particular one was fairly immediate because once they realized what was going on, they shut down their entire cloud infrastructure for like over a week. They just pulled the plug, which, considering they didn't know what was happening at the moment, that's probably not a bad thing. But then they had to deal with everyone that had on-prem infrastructure to say, hey, you need to shut this down as soon as possible. We do not have a fix at the moment for this. And that was what many did. And so that was that. It was kind of one of those things that you kind of knew. Now, the end user may have not known, right? So you may have hired an MSP and you don't know what tools they're using, right? Or you may not have verified that. And most small companies, or even some medium-sized companies, they don't care, right? They're just dealing with their IT. IT gets fixed, cool, use the tool. I don't care what tool it is. And so those clients may have never known, may have no clue what in their environment. The MSP was very aware.
So I'm going to throw another grenade for you before we get to one of the comments on the chat here. SolarWinds equals Kaseya?
Two different things. As far as what happened, and
they're both supply chain, though.
They're both supply chain, but SolarWinds was, I mean, we famously know it was a password, right? SolarWinds 123, right? So everyone knows that it was an intern, and they gained access to their coding environment.
Why you gotta blame the intern? Stop that shit.
Hey, that's what happened. So that's a little different. It still was supply chain, right? Because the code was released and signed by SolarWinds. This was a vulnerability in the software that a third party used to manage your environment. So a tad different, right? So the vulnerability was exploited, and then right when it was exploited, it was pushed through, right? And so it's one of those things that's a little different, two different things, but both are third party.
And so that goes back to, though, do we have to start not regulating necessarily, but as security personnel, do we need to start being more cognizant of our third parties that we deal with and how they implement security?
Is that a rhetorical question?
No, we don't need to do that.
No.
There's a lot of companies that still don't do TPRM. Yeah. They don't do risk management of their third parties. There's a lot of organizations out there that don't do it. Yet, us as security people, you know, when you look at like SolarWinds and stuff like that, you're talking major security companies are just, fuck it, send it, we're good. We're security. We know what the fuck we're doing. So, but hey, we got a comment here, and it's actually pretty interesting. A lot of times, tools are designed to work in an environment deployed using the latest known and best practices for a particular industry. And here's where the problem comes in. Companies that have been around for 30, 40, 50 years are not up to date with best practices. So they end up brewing a shitload of workarounds in-house. Then the vendor says, you are not using my tool as documented. We cannot support it. Fuck.
That's a good point.
That's a very good point.
I mean, he's not wrong. That's how often does that happen? Brad, you who goes through and looks at all of the, MSPs, how often have you seen cases of that happen?
With MSP specifically, it always, so the MSP, right, they're going to give guidance to their client. Their client's going to have the ultimate say, unfortunately, in most cases. They may go against what the MSP is saying. And yeah, so I work a lot with the defense industrial base. So I've worked with a lot of small manufacturers that are making parts for, things that may go into space. And so with that said, a lot of their systems are pretty antiquated. And so, yeah, when you get into that type of thing, though, when you're looking at systems that are old, right? Systems are 30, 40, 50 years old. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to manage those systems, right? You're trying to protect those systems. Put modern controls in front of it, right? That's the idea. Is that if you can control how you get to that old system, great. that's kind of what you're looking at, right? It always gets back to access control. It usually starts there. And so
trust.
If the system allows you, because
correct,
as you know, in a lot of these defense industrial base manufacturers, they're still using, and I've audited, and then you see a Windows XP human machine interface, and you can't do very much access control in some of these systems, especially when you start going into the OT, IT, IoT environment. So it creates problems. And now and I don't want to use the word, the four letters CMMC.
2.0, which hasn't even been validated yet.
I think you have to remove one M, right? It's no longer a maturity model.
Yeah.
It's just a model.
It's 800.
It's just a model.
It's 800, 171 on drugs.
That's all it is. That's really all it is. When I was looking into it, my boss was like, look at this. And then all you got to do is find a way to correlate it to these because it's the same shit. And I was like, okay, that makes it easy. All right. So here's a little note, though. So Brian reached out to POC at NIST for update on MSP standards. It appears to have been dropped during the pandemic and as of right now, not picked back up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's actually so what I do as my on basically my job on a daily basis is I do assessments for 800-171 or CMMC. So I'm very familiar with this, very familiar with what the DoD is doing. There has been talk that the DoD is looking at how do we talk about third-party vendors, right, and MSPs specifically. And what do we look at? Because as part of CMMC, the scoping guidance that was released for this, and this is getting into the whole GRC realm, but it's important, is that
I love GRC. Let's go with it.
Is that MSPs, their tools and some of the security tools they use are in scope for an assessment for CMMC, right? And so when you start to look at that, now the DoD has not said to what extent, but most of it is more than likely going to be access control, right? How do they gain access to the tools that they use to gain access to your environment, right? Because that's kind of what everyone's looking at. And the DoD has hinted at that we're going to start to see some kind of potential guidance and kind of, what he's pointing out of, there was some potential MSP standard that was going to be talked about. So maybe we'll have something from NIST at some point in time, but that doesn't mean we can, just sit by the wayside and not talk about it now.
Yeah, and having those controls in place. Look, I've been a huge proponent of if as an industry we are not going to regulate ourselves, then someone needs to come in and do it. If we're not going to regulate ourselves, somebody needs to stand the fuck up and do it. Because MSPs are a provider of IT space. And if we are not regulating how they access systems, what they're using to access systems, and how they go about doing business, then someone else needs to step in and do it. Because they have unfettered access to so many organizations, whether it's through RDP, which unfortunately is still fucking used to this day, or or something like Kaseya. All it takes is a single vulnerability, and you don't have control on your systems because you have shit security as an MSP, and now you've just given access to everybody. And that's been my fear with the cloud. I ain't gonna lie. Someone gains access to a server, I'm always afraid. Guess what? Every system that's on there, regardless of the company, is now pwned. That's the way I fucking look at it.
Yeah. And so you mentioned MSP regulations. Do you know what state requires MSPs to register?
Cali?
You're not going to believe it when I tell you.
Texas.
Louisiana.
What?
Yeah. The state you would not expect. It's actually because Louisiana had an issue with an MSP that was working for the state at some point in time. So, yeah.
So they have to register with what?
They have to register with the state. That's all they have to do. There's nothing else that's done. They just have to register.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess it's a step in the right direction.
Maybe.
Eric, you typed the wrong thing. Isn't it 3389?
It is.
RDP?
It's 3389.
Yeah, come on, man. You're making me look bad over there. Here,
I mean,
you're typing in my name and you didn't.
33.
We could just look at it upside down. The 6 will be a 9.
Oh, yeah. I screwed up.
God damn it. I'm looking. I'm like, wait, he typed that as me. Hold on. That's the wrong port, damn it.
86.
But yeah,
Trash Panda points out a really good point. We need to regulate ourselves. It will be a nightmare if someone else does it, right? And it's looking at PCI, right?
I hate PCI. I absolutely despise PCI.
So just imagine if there was a framework just for MSPs. And I'm not saying there should be a framework for just MSPs. I think there's other frameworks that can be applied to MSPs without recreating the wheel.
Yeah.
No, my bigger thing comes down into, again, it goes down to how MSPs access networks. And a lot of times, like you talked about, with passwords in the clear and on Notepad or whatever, and all these different things, you should still have now Kaseya is different, and some of these tools are a little bit different in that you log into the tool and then the tool gets access, right? So you RDP and do all these different things and gain access remotely through an RMM. But if you have accounts and you're using one account and sending it out to everybody and saying, hey, we're going to share this username and password to access their entire network, which I'm sure is done. And that is not proper security in any context of the way. And you should always have different passwords, different usernames, and this, that, and a third. And when you're using a remote management tool, maybe it should not have admin and domain admin rights unless absolutely necessary, least privilege. You only get those administrator rights if you actually, I don't fucking know, type in a damn password to say, hey, I need admin rights on this damn machine. Hence the purpose of UAC and Swiss user and sudo and every other damn command out there that has now said, hey, you need to elevate privileges. That is why this shit came out.
And the companies and the end users are the worst nightmare, right? They want you in and out fast. And so the MSPs have tried to make it as simple as possible. And they've cut corners to do that.
And so when does the MSP or sudo, SU, everything, all the things? Eric, God, let me always be root in my system.
Trash says, can priv-esque.
Root. God damn it, you people. Y'all fucking with me today, man. Y'all on some new shit today.
This is why we can't have nice things.
I love y'all. Y'all are something different today. Very first thing I ever asked Cyber Warrior here where he got his port number poster because I was studying for Net Plus. I hate them so. Redbubble.com, just so as a reminder, redbubble.com is where I got my honeycomb port poster that hangs on the back wall when you see my other videos.
And if I had one of those, I wouldn't have screwed up RDP.
Well, I mean, Eric, you may have been the MSP that obscures the port, right? They won't know if it's not the right port number.
That security through obscurity, baby. Funny enough, RDP is not on that port, on that poster.
Yep.
BGP is, but RDP is not. That's fucking weird. So is IRC. Some old ass shit, but not fucking.
Hey, I love IRC.
NTP. So. Wow. No RDP. So yeah, you would have still fucked up RDP even if you had that poster. Just saying, because it doesn't exist on there. But yeah, it is. I look at MSPs and I think security should still be part of the mainframe of how they operate instead of just let us do our job. give us full access, let us do our job. It should be, hey, let us do our job securely.
It has to be. There's no way around it.
Is that going to be on how?
I know we say it,
maybe
but how do we do
none
it?
of us don't know how, but what I mean by how do we enforce MSPs who have to follow the same security regulations, frameworks, recommendations that we force other organizations to follow? And I think you had part of it with some of these organizations. The MSP falls under CMMC or falls under NIST because of how it is worked within the network and worked within the systems. But for companies that where they don't have to abide by CMMC, they don't have to abide by NIST. Well, NIST isn't necessarily something you abide by. It's just something you choose to go by. You don't get necessarily certified as NIST 800 certified. CMMC, there is audits for. NIST, there's not. PCI, there's audits for. So do we just say if you're going to use an MSSP or an MSP and you fall under CMMC or PCI or SOX or whatever the framework is, you have that MSP within your network has to have the same certification?
Yeah, I mean that's where it's going for certain industries, and I mean I think that's clear. But you know, certain industry, there may be some industries that do not have regulatory requirements, and so you could have an MSP that popped up. They go buy the software, they go focus on that one industry that doesn't have the regulations, and they make money, and it's not secure. So you know that happens.
It does. I mean, you think about it. Look at like game developers. Think of like these, like your CD Project Reds and things like that, where they don't have to abide by PCI because they don't sell shit. They don't take credit card information. They're not credit card processors. They're literally game developers. They have no frameworks that they technically have to abide by. They don't need audited. Now, should they operate securely? Yes. Should they follow certain guidelines? Yes. But because no one's auditing them, we can't say that they do.
Correct. So it's one of those things that if the industry itself doesn't self-regulate, which is probably not going to happen, you're going to have other regulations that come into play, and it potentially could start at the states. It could start there, right? But we might see it other places. But there's going to be, at some point, there's going to be something that happens, right? So obviously, if you look at the federal market, right, that you have CMMC, they have those requirements they have to do for anyone that's a defense contractor, and then also the subs for the defense contractors, for the primes. That's kind of a well-maintained thing. Then you have cloud services that have to follow FedRAMP, right? So there's that side of things. And there's a little known, it's not as well known, but there's something also called state ramp, which is literally a copy of FedRAMPs for the state level. Yeah. And so you're going to see these things start to trickle down further and further and further into local government. And when that starts to happen, you're going to start to see more and more requirements for these providers, because even local municipalities, they don't have internal IT staff a lot of times. They hire an MSP.
And what I would like to see with that is if you were going, because you're right, they don't have an IT staff. So if you're going to work with a local or federal government, you as an organization and how you operate with other organizations within our, state have to follow this regulation or framework or whatever.
But that's also, and let's introduce this issue, okay? Everything that you guys have said about regulations and CMMC and all the other ones is if you are going to work with a state or federal or DoD environment. If you're working commercial to commercial, there's nothing. It's the customer that's hiring you that says, okay, show me your credentials. And that's when they do the SOC 2 or they do some of the other ones that are check the blocks. I mean, compliance, I say this all the time. And Brad, you've heard me say this. Compliance does not equal
security.
Okay? Just because you say, hey, I've got, you guys have heard my story of 20 years ago, I was rushed into a federal agency
I know
because a
that story.
secretary said during a congressional hearing that he had 20 IDSs in the database, in the data center. They rushed me over and I said, where are these IDSs? And they were literally stacked in cardboard boxes, plugged to the wall, no Ethernet. So the person that did the presentation to Congress didn't lie. There were 18 IDSs in the data center. Compliance. They weren't connected. They didn't ask that.
That wasn't part of the requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's and I see a lot. Obviously, compliance doesn't equal security. But if you focus on security, compliance should be a product of that security.
And that's the big thing. And that was my problem with PCI and PCI audits when I worked for. There it is. When I worked for a certain company, I found out that up until I think the year I started there, the owner was friends with the auditor. And so it was, hey, do you have a firewall? Yes. Hey, does it log? Yes. Okay, you're good. No proof required. Just answer the questions. And so PCI and when it was first implemented was just that, hey, do you have this? And a lot of auditors didn't even check. And even if they did check, hey, do you log all your shit? Yeah. All right, let me see the logs. Half of them didn't know what the fuck they were looking at anyway. So they could have been looking at debug logs of hardware issues, and they've been like, oh, you're good. Okay, cool. Let's go with it. And so I've always had an issue with PCI. It was the bare minimum ever.
I've got another story for Brad. This one's really good. I was auditing a floating hotel, and they were very happy about all this segregation. They had just spent millions of dollars on these high-end Palo Alto firewalls between all their networks in this floating hotel. When I looked at the firewalls, any. Everything was any.
Oh, I've seen firewalls like that.
Compliance, they had firewalls.
Yeah, and some of it comes down to, right, some of the auditors and assessors that do these things. And this is not by any means all auditors and all assessors, is that not all of them are technical, right? And so if they're trying to assess something that is technical, it could potentially be very difficult for them to understand what they're looking at is actually meets the compliance, right? It's hard for them to know that sometimes. And so that's where if you do a security assessment versus like a gap assessment or a compliance assessment, then you're actually looking at the actual security of the environment versus the compliance of the environment.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we do gap assessments. We're not auditors. We do security assessments too, but we do the gap assessments kind of midway through to see, okay, you have these security tools, you have this, and this implemented. Let's see where your gaps are. Do you have 100% visibility with your SIM or with your EDR? Is it installed across the board on all your systems? Things of that nature. So we do both, but a lot of companies will only do like a gap assessment. Like, hey, I'll tell you where you should improve. Not a full-blown security assessment of, hey, these are where you're weak. This is what you can do better. This is where your gaps are. This is where you have no visibility whatsoever, and I can do whatever the fuck I want to these systems. Like, so you have these things, and it's better to be able to offer every type and have the personnel that know what the hell they're looking for. To know, okay, I'm going to install an EDR. Great. Do you monitor it? Yeah. How do you monitor it? I get emails if there's alerts. How many emails do you fucking get a day, homie? Because an EDR is going to trigger nonstop. Like, just saying,
I made the mistake of configuring the SIM to email me all the events.
And I think you you bring up a really good point, and someone else in the chat even brought this up. Is that compliance is the minimum, right? So we can talk about what the compliance framework. We can use that as like a set ideas. Here's the best things we should do, at least the bare minimum. But that does not mean that you have to stop there, right? You can do more than what it says. Now, getting buy-in for that is the difficult part.
That's right.
And that's the hard part, and that's what I think a lot of organizations deal with. And this is where I'm gonna kind of I get emails all the time on grandma dancing. It's dancing granny, Kev. You don't get dancing granny. You didn't request it right.
all the things.
All the things.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go to my own story, how we talk about alerts and events and kind of how these things trigger. And then on top of that, the whole, getting the buy-in. So, oh God, Eric's going to make me small for dancing granny. Hurry up, homie. There she is. All right, y'all better be happy because dancing granny now took
just
over
keep
my
on
entire
talking.
fucking
Just
screen.
keep on talking. Come on.
God damn it.
See?
But no, I like a dancing granny. But no, it's crazy because I look at it and I'm just like, buy-in is hard, but that's where your pen testers come in. Because a pen tester will show you where you're vulnerable and give you the fixes, right? A good pen tester, a good pen testing organization is going to tell you how to remediate those things. And so that gets that buy-in from upper to say, hey, they could basically run roughshod on our network. These are how we fix it. We need help. Oh, okay, cool. I'll give you help. But it's getting so you got to do it in stages. You got to kind of take it a step at a time. Maybe you can't get all your security staff right away, but I can get a pen tester to come in here and pen test this, which is part of compliance. Compliance says,
I'm changing my title to this.
Dude, no, you're the cyber papa, homie.
Senor.
You're not Senor Information Security Officer.
I like it.
So it is. It's one of those things where, you have to do it in a phased approach because sometimes until you have proof in writing, you're not going to get buy-in. And you, as an employee, can talk out your ass all you want and tell them this is what we need. And they're only going to be like, yeah, I got about $5,000 I can send your way. What can you do with that?
So
nothing.
Let's say you go through an entire assessment and you have all these findings, right? And it's in pretty bad shape. What do you start with first?
Well, you want my answer? Because I'll tell you. That is where, if you have a good pen testing organization, they're going to sit down with you and they're going to tell you what the most critical is and the most vulnerable, because they're going to talk to you as an organization and say, hey, what's externally facing, what's internally facing, what's not behind a wall, what is, they're going to go through and do that risk assessment with you. But here's the kicker to that. In order for them to do a proper risk assessment, it costs more money. They'll read out the report and tell you how to fix your shit. But if you want them to guide you on the risk and the mitigation in the blue team side of things, pay more.
Okay.
So rightfully so.
All right. So then when you throw that, let's say you have some things that you do have to remediate, right? Let's say they take 6 months. What do you do first? What I'm getting at is that a lot of people will say, oh, we have all these big low-hanging fruits, right? We have to deal with admin rights throughout the organization. It's going to take us 6 months to go through and do this. And they'll punt monitoring in the environment because it costs a lot more. But then they had that whole 6 months, and guess what? No one's monitoring what's going on.
Right.
And they're working towards that remediation, whereas you need to monitor it first, detect first, and then you can make it better.
Well, if that's one of your weak points, correct. If detection and monitoring, if you don't have visibility into your network, then it doesn't matter what the fuck you implement. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter what you put in play. Because you could sit there all day.
Visibility into the network?
Yes, that's
Half the
exactly what I
people.
fucking said.
What's the other phrase that I always say? If you don't know what you have, you can't secure it. Asset management.
You don't know what you don't know.
I know
That's the crazy part.
large companies that are doing kick off the network projects because they don't know, they identify an asset and nobody knows what it is.
I've seen companies like that.
Another
what's this?
another story. I was at the Navy Yards in Philadelphia. This was like 10, 15 years ago. And I found a IP address. We tracked it down, found a database in a closet. It was an original Mac. I mean, like the little box. What were they called? The
Mac 2E.
Yeah.
The Mac 2s or whatever.
And it was still running
There's
a
one back there.
database. Yeah. Yeah, that's
you
right.
don't see the Mac geek behind him. He has everything he owns is Apple.
Yeah. So
Everything.
this thing was still running after 20 years. And they didn't know it was there. It was running a critical database.
So to bring it full circle to what we started the conversation on, right? So we talked about, we hinted at how do we even know if like an RMM is in the environment, right?
Yeah.
It starts with inventory. You got to know what software is there too, not just the asset itself, right? You have to know what software is in your environment. Because let's say that there is something that comes out, right? You know, some Kaseya gets breached again, right? And you don't know that your MSP is using it, then you have no idea how to react.
And again, you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't do asset and software inventory, you can't secure really anything. I mean, you can, but if you don't know you have it, you're not watching for it. And so that's where I think that, like, to Eric's point, having those inventories is huge. Whether it's a software inventory, a hardware inventory, a fucking VM inventory, because you have a million VMs in the cloud, and it's compute instances or EC2 instances or Google Compute or Google Cloud instances, whatever the case may be, you got to monitor them. And what sucks is when you have a lot of, as a lot of organizations do now, they go to the cloud for everything. And then they tear down and stand up everything. If you're not monitoring the entire infrastructure, like an entire subnet, every time something's tore down, brought up, and maybe gets a different IP, you're no longer watching it. Wait, so I have to tell IT I installed LogMeIn so I can work from home. I mean, you probably should.
I mean, there's a couple of problems with that, right? One, you shouldn't install it. Two, why is LogMeIn allowed out the network, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I like this. Hold up. Brian got a good one. Hire people whose sensibilities are offended by the current state of your environment. I have been offended by, like, the state of a lot of environments. Squints and Bluetooth. I've worked for organizations, large organizations, where everybody was an admin on their machine. That, as a security person, pisses me off probably more than anything. Like,
Why?
Why are you an admin? Why is HR an admin on their own machine?
I want to be able to install software to make my job easier.
I don't give a fuck. If it's not approved, you're not installing it. But again, this comes down to part of the problem. When you start an organization, that's how you build the culture. Because at the time, say a company is, like they said earlier, 30, 40, 50 years old, and you've built this culture around BYOD is only like 10% worse. but as you build this culture, then it becomes hard to change because people are so used to doing whatever they need to do to get their job done. And on top of that, they're so used to being able to do whatever they want to do to have fun. They have this computer, they can install whatever the hell they want. I want Adam as my text editor. Why? Because I do. You have, I don't know, VS Code. I want Adam. Why? Because I do.
Yeah, and so
like you can't give me a reason, but because everybody's an administrator, they have Spotify and they have the
well,
YouTube
see, the thing,
app now.
some of those applications don't require admin rights. You can install Chrome without admin privileges. And so when we talk,
I've never done it as a non-admin, so I wouldn't know. But
yeah, you can. There's a lot of things you can install without admin privileges. Discord, right? You can install Discord without admin privileges. You can install.
Actually, you're right. That does not pop an alert on my box.
And so what you get back to allow listing is you have to stop any executable because admin privileges do not. Yeah, I said allow listing. Admin privileges do not solve the entire problem. And then browser extensions is a whole nother category of things.
So are scripts. Yeah. Look, I ain't gonna lie. All right, so look, I don't get paid by anybody to do my shows. I wish I did. Look, if you're a sponsor, please sponsor me, or if you can talk to somebody, I'd love to get sponsored for one of my shows. We'll talk. I want TikTok on my work computer. Oh, Juan, you're hilarious.
TikTok?
China.
I didn't say it.
I said it.
You want sponsors and you freaking blurt that out?
I don't give a goddamn. Look, there are certain organizations I will blatantly say who the hell owns them. I don't care.
5 add-ins.
5 add-ins.
Hey, Kev.
All of them macro enabled.
Kev, I'm gonna send you a printer.
We know.
But no, I don't know. I just look at it. I completely lost my train of thought after like the 3 comments we just had.
Well, I wanna highlight something. Trash is on his way right now to a meetup that I wanted so bad to go. Philly 2600 is meeting in Philly tonight, doing RF stuff and freaking this evening, and I so wanted to go to that one. So, Trash, let me know how it went.
Brian, thank you. All right, look, hey, everybody tag Yingling in a post on Twitter, Instagram.
Well, you got to show the bottle and see.
And hold up, I'll give you a screenshot. Hold on, we're gonna work on this. Let me get you a screenshot for it. Everybody tag Yingling.
No.
All right, I drink their beer every episode. Okay, I do love their beer, and I want them to sponsor because that'd be fantastic. I would honestly love for Yingling to sponsor an episode. Just look, just tag them, send them a picture. I don't give a damn. Just say, hey, you really should sponsor this.
Brad,
I don't fucking care.
You knew what you were getting into. So.
Were you getting to like say who you wanted to sponsor besides Yingling? I think you were trying to start to hint at that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I really don't care who.
Okay.
As long as I can talk to them. I just want to talk to them first because I will say this. Actually, this is what I was going to touch on. Is as a pen tester, because I do blue team and red team, as a pen tester, the hardest EDR I have come across so far was CrowdStrike. As long as it's monitored. Because them motherfuckers picked up everything I threw at it, including the kitchen sink, and finally somebody was like, dude, just fucking stop, homie, and kicked me out of the system. Like, you're isolated. You're not allowed to access shit. Get out of here. And I was like, you motherfuckers. All right, cool. I guess, like, so yeah, I do. I've also worked with Cylance. I've looked into their product. The problem with Cylance, kind of like a lot of your other EDRs, is it doesn't get the TLC and the profiles and the implementation that it deserves. Pen testers check whether pens are red, blue, black, green, or purple. God damn you, William. You're missing purple, Eric. He had all of them except for purple. There we go. All right. Now we're good. All right.
I want to be on the orange
got the
team.
Rainbow.
What's the orange team for?
I've been trying so hard to call the GRC team the green team.
Hey, I put that hashtag in my post. I don't want to hear
I know
shit.
you did, but
we'll run with it. The green team. It's GRC is green. Blue team is blue. Red team is red. GRC is green.
Purple. Yeah.
Purple team is red and blue combined.
There you go. Changed it. There you go.
El Señor Jefe de Seguridad. But no, look, this has been awesome. It's been an awesome night. Brad, thank you for joining us. We are at well over the top of the well, not well over, so now that applause is done, because Eric likes to throw sound effects into my shows now, and I am very appreciative because I add visual effects to my other shows. I could use some sound effects for this one. Brad, before we go, give us some last words. Tell us what you think, what you know, anything. Just run with it.
I would say that we've talked about a lot of how to get into the industry. I think the biggest thing is network people. Like just get out there, talk to other people in the industry that are trying to get into the industry. Don't look at different ISSA chapters within your area, B-sides. Just get your name out there, get to talk to people, and you'll find out that the security industry is not that big.
It's not. It's definitely not. We know everybody. I can't tell you how many times people have been like, "Hey, do you know Ty Wilson?" Yeah, I know him. Taught 2 of his classes. Do you know so and so? Do you know so and so? Yeah, I know them. They've been on my show. Like, we all know each other, even if they haven't been on the show. I know them from Twitter, LinkedIn, anywhere else. I can reach out to everybody. I can reach out to Eric, and if I don't know somebody, Eric knows somebody. If Eric don't know somebody, I'm sure Alyssa Miller knows somebody, or Bryson Board, or any of the other numerous contacts that we have. So, small world. If you're a shit person, guess what? Sorry, you're not getting hired, homie. Small world in the tech space. And that's another thing. KevTech. Look, KevTech, who is huge in helping people get jobs in help desk, in support, and just everything within the IT space. If you burn a bridge with me or Eric or anybody else, and you're trying to get a job in IT, we know probably the person that knows more people than either of us. And you're not going to get a job. Just saying. And if you're trying to get a job in cyber and you screw over Kev, I'm not going to give you a job. Just kind of how it goes.
We're talking about the positives of you networking. Yeah, that's reach out to us. We can
shit, you're right. I am usually positive.
Positive.
Eric, you're right. All right, yeah. So no, really, get to know us, love us. I love you all. If y'all have seen any of my videos, I like to be an asshole, but truly, I do love you all. Eric, before I go, before I sign us off, give us some last words.
El Señor Jefe de Seguridad is going to speak now. Okay. So we. All right. Some positive vibes, as Kev said. So I want to wish everybody a happy and safe, happy 4th of July if you're in the United States. Go ahead and have a great long weekend and relax, because mental health is also important in the field. Don't burn out. So take this time to relax, recharge, and come on stronger next week. So that's very important. If you're going to use fireworks, I hope you have your digits next week. Be safe.
Thanks, Eric. Hey, it is. It's as always. It's a pleasure having everybody here. And yes, I joke and I make fun of situations. Eric, as always, is the comedic relief. Or Sergeant AR, who just put that up. But yeah, I do. I love you all. I really hope you tune in every week. We do Motivational Monday on Friday, Tech Tuesday on Tuesday. We actually just did a live this past Tuesday, which was amazing. It was fun having everybody there. And then, of course, Security Happy Hour every Friday. Next Friday, we have someone new to the industry. I'll let you know who it is next week. But you need to tune in live to be able to ask questions and figure out what it's like being new, trying to learn and find their way into the field of cyber. So it's going to be an amazing show. I hope to see you all there. Otherwise, enjoy your 4th of July weekend. Please have fun. Take care. And honestly, just be nice, man. It costs $0 and 0 cents to be nice to each other. Have a good